Welcome to the World Trade Congress on Gender. This is the first international research conference of this scale on trade and gender. Researchers from around the world are set to present their latest findings on how global gender equality can make trade a stronger instrument for helping economies recover from the polycrisis of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, high energy and food prices, and climate change, all of which have made already wide gender gaps worse.
One of the things that we've seen over the last 2 years in terms of women, how they have been disproportionately affected by COVID, has kind of just put in very stark relief what lack of inclusion has done and how quickly gains can be undone in a simple 2-year period. We have to be more proactive and deliberate about putting in place women's policies that help women in international trade, policies that enable women to access finance, policies that actually support the inclusion of women in global value chains.
Our estimates suggest that men currently are in exporting activity disproportionately. So of all the full-time jobs that directly and are indirectly supported by exports, 40% are held by women and 60% are held by men. And we also have evidence that women-led businesses benefit more from the trade policy measures than men-led businesses because they are smaller and because they are younger.
Since August 2020, when the economic restrictions were eliminated and our economy started boosting, we saw a lot of new entrepreneurships and new entrepreneurs popping up in order to be able to go through the pandemic. And again, women were largely leading these new businesses that came up during pandemic.
What we see in trade agreements so far is mainly aspirational. It's mainly sort of highlighting something that we want to see happen, not necessarily something that will happen because of the way it's crafted. These provisions are not necessarily binding on the parties. They don't necessarily lead us to a certain outcome.
Women should be involved in the entire trade policy value chain, and also identification of the priorities for trade negotiations, and not only be informed, but be involved.
There are issues of labor constraints, especially for women in the informal cross-border trade. We realize that they face a lot of harassment at the borders because they are not aware of trade information, rules and procedures that they are supposed to go through. And so usually custom officials take advantage of them. Some of them extort money from them. Some of them even harass them sexually.
We find that the trade liberalization causes more women to participate in the labor markets, and then also leads to more women to reallocate to the service sectors where wages are higher.
We find that the women entrepreneurial exporters are go-getters, they're energetic, they're tough, and they're determined to succeed. And they have done so, and they have done so by creating their own networks, their own support systems. And we think that with more government and private sector support, they will be able to do so much more.
All of this shows how much progress we've made in how we approach the issue of trade and gender. But it also demonstrates the many gaps that still exist, both in terms of research on this subject and the need for women's economic empowerment more generally. We, therefore, still have a lot of work to do.